Welcome, everyone. Good morning, or good afternoon, or evening, depending on where you're joining us from today. So just to go over the agenda for today's session, we're going to start off by sharing a bit about CBB, the work we do and how we approach it, and then get a bit more into the circle of actions and what it involves, who should apply, and next steps. Then we're going to have our colleague from Tamarack, Jess, ask us some questions that we've prepared to get a bit more into the nitty-gritty of the cohort. And then we'll shift to questions that you folks in the audience have, and we'll wrap up with some closing announcements. So we'll just start off by introducing ourselves. My name is Prachir Pasricha. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm a manager of communities on Tamarack's Building Belonging and Climate Transitions teams. And as we're on this topic of belonging, we thought it would also be nice for us to share our own definitions or experiences of belonging. And I think for me, I would say it's to feel seen by and heard by and cared for by another human being. And I think a necessary prerequisite of that is to not feel the need to hide or change a part of who you are in the presence of others in order to be seen and heard and cared for. And we're also sharing these definitions and experiences just to capture that we're not prescriptive in how you define belonging. And it's definitely not, a part of the criteria to abide by a singular definition. And I'll just note that we chose this title of community facilitators quite intentionally. We really are looking to build a community of communities that are embarking on this learning journey. And through the resources and containers and connections we make to make sure that everyone in the circle feels supported and equipped with what they need to foster belonging in their communities. And both Jorge and I very much see ourselves as facilitators of this work. In the spirit of asset-based community development, which you'll hear more about in a bit, you all are the experts in your local context. Yes, we will have we will have content experts that'll be guiding us through our monthly sessions, but your teams will hopefully be made up of both those content experts and context experts, the latter being those who bring that experiential knowledge to this work. And Jorge and I are there to bring all of these different pieces and actors together. I'm joining you all today from the traditional territory and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot Nations, colonially known as Mississauga in Ontario, Canada. And I think given that we're talking about belonging in our communities, I think it's essential that we acknowledge and act upon the ways in which Indigenous peoples who have stewarded and cared for the lands that we call Canada since time immemorial, much before myself and others settled here, have been made to feel like they don't belong through historical and present oppression. And I think that's particularly relevant given that the values of connection and interdependence and community that are so important to this work are in the very DNA of Indigenous people's way of life that us non-Indigenous treaty people would do well to learn from. So I just want to lift that as we think about who we're engaging in this work of building more inclusive and connected communities in a way that's just and equitable. And with that, I'll pass it over to my colleague Jorge to introduce himself.
Thank you, Prachir. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's so wonderful to have you with us today. I'm just excited. This is a really important moment for communities building belonging. And before I jump into the why of it, I want to acknowledge the lands where I live, work, and play, which are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We colonially call these lands Toronto in 2024. And I have an identity that is always in transition as a newcomer to these lands. I've also spent years of my life in the lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka, the Mohawk people, in a community that we know as Tiohtià:ke, known as Montreal. So my identity is always fluctuating between these two spheres. And in this context of fluctuation and transition, I thought of sharing with you this beautiful resource. Maybe some of you are familiar with it already. It's a podcast called The Secret Life of Canada. You can take a photo with your phone and scan the QR code to learn more about it and also access the list of episodes. It's a beautiful podcast that also that not only brings together conversations on reconciliation and the history of these lands, but also in the spirit of Black History Month, it teaches us about the contributions of many different communities that have shaped the societies in which we live in which we work, we play, and we connect with one another. So I highly recommend this podcast. It has helped me a lot in my own learning journey, and I hope it continues to help others as well. So I'm going to move to the next slide. And okay, there we go. Communities building belonging and who we are and why we're here. This is a really important part of the conversation. Thank you to each of you for continuing to join us in this movement. As you know, we come from Cities Deepening Community, which is Tamarack's second biggest and oldest network in vibrant communities. We're very proud of the work that our communities are doing, and we want to continue cultivating these insights on asset-based community development and collective impact to help us develop plans and interventions that center belonging at the heart of community work. We all know through our experiences that services are not going to get us where we need to be. Right now, a couple of us are in Ottawa with our communities building youth futures networks, and we're thinking about the support systems for youth, but not only in the context of better outcomes for them, but also in the context of belonging. So it's beautiful that we're having this conversation in communities building belonging right now, because this is an invitation for all of us to rethink how we work together, to really be very intentional in building new pathways that can get us where we need to be. We know that there are many crises, the crisis of climate, the crisis of polarization, the crisis of inequality. But in the context of this crisis, we need to build strong belonging. Otherwise, we're not going to get where we need to go. We believe that by looking at these impacts, increasing a sense of belonging to place and people, fostering equity and inclusion in the places people live, increasing a sense of connectedness, increasing a sense of resilience, increasing a sense of safety, well-being, and enabling local economies, we can shift the rules of the game. We've heard those stories. We've documented it in our 10 guide on reconnecting and making community essential. And we think we're at a very important moment to accelerate our work together. And this is why we're building this cohort. I'm going to now pass it over to Prachir, who's going to tell us more about the Circle of Actions. So over to you, Prachir.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jorge, and thanks for that overview of CBB, and it's great to have Jorge as our associate director for the CBB team. And we're really excited about the Circle of Actions because it's the first time Communities Building Belonging is doing something like this. And I think it's helpful to think of what it is and what you'll get out of it in a couple of different ways. And the first one is as the 7-month learning journey that we'll be on, that's designed to support your team and your broader community through the process of creating a plan and testing out interventions that foster a sense of belonging. And we'll get more into what that learning journey looks like on a month-to-month basis and what's included beyond those monthly sessions in a bit. But on a high level, it is about sharing, discussing, and working through concepts, tools, and resources to support you in your belonging work. But I think another great way to think about the cohort is the container it creates for you to connect and share best practices, lessons learned, and challenges with each other. Because we know from some of you who have reached out with interest in the cohort and from our calls with our members that everyone is at different stages in doing this work. Some communities have just begun thinking about belonging. Others may already have strategies. And so we're hoping that that diversity in experiences creates a rich learning environment for everyone. Because we also know that while communities may be at different stages, many of you are grappling with similar issues in your local context. And that's where we're hoping that this network of diverse communities across Canada can help by facilitating that peer-to-peer learning as you go through this collective journey. So I'll pass it off to Jorge to talk a bit more about a couple of the building blocks, I think, for that journey.
Thank you, Prachir. Thanks for making this powerful transition in relation to how we're approaching this work. So I want us to be grounded in these two approaches that have been very helpful in building the movement that we've built over the past couple of years within Communities Building Belonging, Cities Deepening Community before. And these are asset-based community development and collective impact. I see a couple of familiar faces, and I know that for some of you, this is not news. You've experienced the tremendous potential of the things that can happen when we get ourselves organized and really start thinking about structures and frameworks to really shift the needle and move forward. Incredible work that you're already doing. And when it comes to asset-based community development, we really want to look at the strengths and the gifts that we all bring individually and as a society collectively. We want to root our insights in the fact that relationships build community. People must be connected for sustainable development. People need to be placed at the center, and they need to be viewed as actors, not as passive recipients of more services. We want to look at leaders, how they involve others, how we shape this leadership potential that we all have, regardless of our personalities or leadership styles. We can all become change makers. This is core to how we see this work happening. We want to look at people caring for one another. We want to build strong systems of connection that can help us navigate through crises, such as the pandemic and the climate emergency that we're all living in. We want to foster listening, and AB's asset-based community development can help us do that. Listen to people's needs. We were just reminded this week in the Communities Building Youth Futures gathering that we cannot do youth and belonging work without involving youth. It's the same for every individual in our community. We need to listen to their needs, and we also need to be able to ask ourselves questions, bold questions, so that we can generate new ideas and new ways of moving things forward. And as many of you know, collective impact is a powerful framework that can help us move to action by identifying a common agenda for change, which is something that we want to look as we develop plans and interventions for belonging within our circle of actions. We also want to look at the shared measurement frameworks for data analysis, impact reporting. We want to look at those mutually reinforcing activities that are happening in our communities that we could maybe help amplify. We want to build open and clear communication pathways, channels. And of course, this work is a lot about strengthening, or if you're just at an early stage, helping you develop that backbone infrastructure so that you can get to developing plans and interventions on belonging in your community work. So the last thing I want to say is, we know these processes work. We've been working on them since 2016. We've seen the amazing impact in communities from Cambridge to Wetaskiwin to communities also in Atlantic Canada, communities in Quebec that are looking at this work too. And we just want to bring all these approaches together and center them when it comes to belonging so that we can help you move faster in the work that you're doing and getting unstuck if you're experiencing issues in developing those plans and interventions. So sorry, I get very excited about this work. I'll pass it over to Prachir now. Prachir, would you mind telling us more about what we're offering in the context of the Circle of Actions?
Yes, for sure. Thanks, Jorge. In terms of what we're offering, the cohort will be structured around these monthly workshops with guest speakers, both from within and outside of Tamarack. And those workshops will be a mix of hearing from those speakers, but also connecting with each other in breakout sessions to talk through what you've learned and questions you're holding. And as I mentioned, we'll be talking about the specific topics of those sessions a bit later. But in between them, there will be opportunities to have group coaching calls, including with our Learning Center consultants. So if there are particular topics or issues that a group of communities wants to work through, we can facilitate more focused discussions on those. We also have a members only community of practice, which is a chance to hear from and connect with actors even beyond the cohort and hear from guest speakers. And for residents with lived and living experience who participate in your teams, we're offering a systems transformers cohort to help develop their skills of facilitation, systems thinking, and collaborative leadership. So I'll turn it back to you, Jorge, to speak a bit more to that opportunity.
Thank you, Prachir. And yeah, just want to remind us back on what I was saying about the leadership piece and how we believe that everyone can be a leader, a change maker. We truly believe that. And this is why we designed this systems transformer learning journey that is happening while you're working in the Circle of Actions. So all of the communities that will participate in the Circle of Actions will have access to this special training program for developing the next generation of leaders with the one and only Heather Kim. She is going to be working closely with these amazing trailblazers, providing tools on how to become a connector of systems, how to become a block connector, and you will get the opportunity, if you're interested, in either deepening your understanding on what a block connector looks like, or joining some conversations with our Live Schoolhouse partners in Atlantic Canada, who have a fantastic model of hosting community conversations for developing shared skills, shared tools, and building community. So this is all included when you join the Circle of Actions. Again, just to recap, you're joining the Circle of Actions, and at the same time, leaders with lived experience from their communities will have access to this leadership program, the Systems Transformers Cohort, which will be facilitated by Heather, and they could like choose their own experience. They could participate and deepen their knowledge in the block connector training, or they could connect with our friends at Life Schoolhouse and gain skills on how to become hosts for community activities and training. This is really exciting work, and we can't wait to see all the insights that you will continue to cultivate as part of this experience and in collaboration with your communities in the Circle of Actions. So, Prachir, would you mind telling us more about this piece on who is this opportunity for?
Yeah, for sure. I think, we're really looking to bring together communities across Canada that are interested in developing local plans and implementing interventions for belonging with a few commitments. And before I get to those, I just want to note that this year's cohort is limited to communities within Canada, but we're definitely keen and open to explore how we can expand the opportunity internationally in the future. So I think one piece of the opportunity that Jorge has touched on a bit is applying that ABCD and collective impact lens that are central to Tamarack's work. And Jorge spoke a bit to them, so I won't get too much into detail here, but I dropped a couple links in the chat where you can learn a bit more about these two concepts, and those will also be shared in the follow-up email that goes out after today's call. We're also hoping that you can participate as meaningfully as possible in the cohorts offerings. So that includes the monthly calls, the dates and times for which you can find on the event page for the cohort. But in between sessions, there'll also be resources to review, and some of those are more essential or foundational, and others are optional, as well as homework assignments to complete, which could look like discussion questions or planning canvases for your teams. Of course, we recognize that all of you must have a lot on your plate already, and there may be some months of the year that are busier than others for you. So it's not like, you won't be able to continue if you haven't completed the homework assignments. All of the offerings are really intended to help just provide structure and direction and keep you accountable both to yourselves and the work that you're doing. And the last point on the slide is given the ethos of asset-based community development and principles of belonging, we're really looking to what Jorge just talked about to engage residents with lived and living experience as you develop those plans and interventions. And that means not only having residents within your teams, but also engaging with residents in the broader neighborhood or community as you go through this learning journey. And there'll be a session in the cohort on what that meaningful community engagement looks like. A couple other points I'll add is that it's also important to us that we're centering equity and justice in this work of building belonging. So recognizing which experiences or identities or perspectives may historically and or presently be missing from decision-making processes, and ensuring that they're uplifted and honored in how you approach each step of this journey. And finally, given that building belonging is, done best with this whole of community approach, we're looking for groups that bring together actors across sectors within a given place. So that could include municipal staff, nonprofits, associations, and residents all coming together. And I'll just note for the point at the bottom about eligibility, the Circle of Actions is open to both existing and prospective members of Tamarack. And just to provide some context for those of you who may be less familiar with how Tamarack works, we have, to what Jorge spoke about a bit earlier, 4 networks, one of which is Communities Building Belonging, that are made up of members who pay an annual membership fee that comes with some of the benefits that we've talked about. And you can learn more about the benefits and the fees, which vary based on population size, in our membership package, which we'll drop a link to in the chat, but is also on the event page for the cohort. But I'll note that we're open to discussing the fee with groups who may not have the resources to pay the full amount, and we have an option to indicate that in the application form. So if you're not already a member and you're interested in becoming one, please reach out to either Jorge or myself, and we can go from there. And I'll pass it to Jorge to dive deeper into that session breakdown.
Thank you, Prachir. And you just mentioned something really important, which is the fact that we'll be with you throughout this learning journey. I really hope that you are getting this message from a place of excitement, because this is where Prachir and I are coming from. We're very excited to do this work together with you. This is a love letter for all of you for being with us over the past couple of years. We believe so much in your potential, and we just want to really get our work to the next level. And that's where we're coming from. You're never going to be alone in this learning journey. We're going to be with you in every step of the journey. And with the way we're working now at Tamarack in a more integrated way across our networks, the ones that Prachir was mentioning, there's always going to be support for you. So we want you to feel connected, to be part, to feel part of a bigger movement. And yeah, this is all for you. And so our learning journey, in the spirit of what I said, is designed for you to start testing all these different ideas to help us get to developing these plans or interventions on belonging. Our first session starts on March 19, and we're going to be looking at making the case for belonging. Why do we need to have this conversation? What are we hearing in the system? In the systems, we're going to have two guest speakers who are going to kick off our first circle of actions. One of them, again, is our friend Heather Kim. Heather is still working closely with us. She's very committed to this work. She's super excited about it. And she'll be working closely with us throughout the learning journey. And our other speaker is Kim Samuel, who, as you know, is a really key systems leader in the movement on building belonging, not only in Canada, but globally, frankly. We're also hosting in April a session on building connected, inclusive and connected communities. So we'll be looking at collective impact and its promise in helping us move our work forward. Then we're going to look at community engagement and get into really great activities to help us unpack some of the tensions that we're dealing with, develop systems for participation in the context of belonging. We're going to be mapping our assets. So here, once again, our friend Heather will join us to really look at ABCD and how can we start moving to action. And we also have a session on planning, testing, and evaluating. And we want to help you develop some tools and thinking on how to develop, how to plan and test your work, so that we can think about evaluating it in case you want to report to your funders or local partners. And we're also going to have a session on sustaining community-led collaboratives, not only through the lens of the work that some of our colleagues have done on organizational and financial sustainability, but also through the lens of social finance. What are some tools that are out there in the system that we could tap into them to start building so financial sustainability for our own community collaboratives? And the last session is really in the spirit of celebration, acknowledging your outstanding work. And we will make the room for you to help us share with our members, not only within communities building belonging, but across Tamarack, on what you've learned and why this journey has been so meaningful for you. And we'll have also some special guests for that, that unique session at the end of our journey. So I think now it's your turn, Prachir, to tell us more about the application process, what it looks like.
For sure. Thanks so much, Jorge. And before I jump into that, I just want to flag the question that came into the Q&A. Carrie, thanks so much for the question and nice to see you. And I just want to note that we will be getting to that in some of the questions that we've prepared around compensation for individuals with lived and living experience participating in the cohorts. So thank you for the question. In terms of next steps, we're accepting applications until the end of the month, which is February 29th this year. And then we'll be taking a week or so to review applications before we communicate decisions, hopefully by March 12th, with the first session being, as Jorge mentioned, the following week on March 19th, and that'll be from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And throughout the process until then, both myself and Jorge are available to answer your questions and address any of your concerns. Our emails are on the slide and they'll be showing up again later on as well. So that's it for our more of a formal presentation part. And we're now going to bring in our colleague Jess into the conversation just to go through some questions that hopefully dig us a bit deeper into our understanding of the circle of actions. Thanks so much for joining us, Jess.
Thank you both for having me. It's nice to see everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm not on the Communities Building Belonging team. I'm part of Tamarack's communications team, but I'm just excited about belonging. So Jorge and Prachir brought me in to help lead some Q&As and just get more involved and learn. So I will start with some frequently asked questions. And it's just essentially first, can Jorge and Prachir, can you tell us about the cohort? What does the content of the cohort look like? And just give us an overview.
Yeah, for sure. So there's going to be a resource library that brings together the materials that we would encourage participants to read and work through each month. So that'll be a mix of articles, case studies, guides, and tools related to that month's theme or topic. And we're aiming to use them to bring together both theory and practice. So covering both, the principles, concepts, and frameworks, but also examples of organizations and communities that have done this work or are doing this work on the ground. And I had mentioned, some will be essential reading, which just sort of means that they're more foundational. We won't be quizzing you on what you've learned, and some will just be recommended if you want to deepen your knowledge. And the workbook will include things, like I mentioned, about discussion questions for the team to work through and planning canvases to fill out. So those sorts of pieces.
Okay, sounds great. And can you tell us more about the support that will be offered between the monthly sessions?
For sure. So as Jorge had mentioned, the team, the CBB team, is there to support you in your learning journey in between the sessions. So we're happy to have check-in calls every now and then to chat about specific questions or issues you're having. And of course, to share resources and answer any questions by email as well. And there'll also be that opportunity to have group coaching calls. So based on demand and interest around specific topics or issues, we can bring together those communities for a more focused discussion. And then finally, for the homework assignments that you are able to complete, and we would hope that you're able to as much as you can, we're happy to provide feedback and provide our thoughts once you share those with us. So that's kind of what it looks like in between the sessions.
Awesome. And so how can we connect with other participants throughout the cohort?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think is, sort of foundational to that piece about peer-to-peer learning. So we're still deciding what communication channel would work best, but we're looking at, maybe some sort of LinkedIn group or some other platform that folks are or could get plugged into for us to be able to connect with each other asynchronously, to raise some of those questions, share resources, and gauge what interest around coaching calls and group coaching calls could look like.
Okay, fantastic. And what is the expected time commitment for participating in the cohort?
Yeah, so I would say we're expecting around 5 to 10 hours per month. So in terms of the breakdown, I would say about, it's an hour and a half for the monthly sessions, maybe 2 to 3 hours for reviewing the materials, or at least the essential ones, and then, 3 to 5 hours maybe for doing the homework as a team and sharing your thoughts. And, again, we won't be checking that you've read the materials or done the homework assignments. So we don't want that expected time commitment to be a deterrent for you. It's just to help get a better sense of those pieces if you do choose to engage with them.
Okay, that's helpful. And do folks need to finish a plan by the end of the cohort?
Yeah, so while we hope, everyone has a, some sort of a plan on a page, no, we recognize that all communities will be at different stages of the work, and also that this work moves at the speed of relationships and trust, which can take time to build. So we'll definitely support all of you in your efforts to put together a plan and cross the finish line, so to speak. But we also recognize that there are different factors, some that are beyond our control, that could affect that.
Okay. And what will happen after we complete the cohort program?
So we're hoping that, for new members, that this is just the beginning of our relationship with you and your first year of engagement with Tamarack. But if you choose to renew membership, you'd continue to have those benefits like coaching calls, access to our membership-only community of practice, and monthly office hours that we'll be having this year as well. But we'd also love to co-create publications like blogs and case studies with any of you that capture and amplify your successes and lessons learned, and also invite you to our other communities of practice that are open to anyone. And Tamarack is also really advocating for this national strategy for belonging, which Jorge will be talking about later on. And so we're looking to uplift the impact that this cohort will have in communities across Canada as a part of that work.
Okay, sounds great. We have a bit of a funny thing here. Jorge, are the following questions for you? Because you and I have the same initials, but I can go through them if you'd like.
Sounds good.
That would be great. Thanks, Jess.
All right. So can you tell us who the opportunity is designed for? For example, what language will it be offered in?
Sure, and so I'll start with my response in French and then I'll switch to English. C'est un moment très important pour communauté bâtissant l'appartenance. On est dans un moment de transition. On veut se devenir vraiment bilingue l'année prochaine. Cependant, étant donné qu'on est dans un moment de transition, ça va prendre du temps pour être là. On est ouvert à accueillir les communautés francophones, bien sûr, mais malheureusement, c'est une question de capacité pour le moment. Les conversations vont se dérouler principalement en anglais. Cela dit, moi, je serai là pour vous soutenir si vous êtes intéressé à faire partie de cette cohorte. On espère l'année prochaine, on pourra commencer avec une cohorte bilingue. So, this is a really important moment for us within Communities Building Belonging. We're not just being more intentional in shifting things, moving things forward in the work with our communities, but we also want to become bilingual. We recognize that this is not an easy transition, so we appreciate your patience. Right now, we're going to be working primarily in English for this cohort, but if there are Francophone partners or bilingual partners that would like to join, we would welcome them, and I'll be their main contact person for this work. Next year, for sure, we will have a bilingual cohort. And as I share this update with you, I want to put out there that we're going to have more and more materials being translated into French so that we can support our Francophone communities in a more appropriate way. Thanks for your patience.
Yes, merci, Jorge. So the next question is, what would an ideal team look like? Is there a minimum or maximum team size?
I love this question. So this is really up to you. We're just putting a couple of elements there for you to consider. So if we could have different actors, diversity in terms of perspectives. So that means having community, but also local governments or a local organization that is very active with your community, that'd be great. We want to bring people with lived experience to this work. That would be really important. And there's going to be support for them, and we will discuss them as the applications are received and depending on the specific needs. But we want you to know that support will be available for individuals with lived experience. We want the teams to really represent its diversity of perspectives, of issues. So we welcome that. And in terms of numbers, we could say at least 4 people. There's really not a maximum, but we've seen that usually teams of 3 to 4 people work really well together.
Okay, fantastic. And what if we don't have a full team by the time we apply?
So that's a great question. Well, you can still have some time after you apply to continuing developing your team. Just a reminder that March 19 would be the first session, and ideally it'd be great if you have your team ready by then. But don't make it too complicated for yourself. Just whatever is realistic and whatever really feels authentic with the context that you're dealing with locally.
Okay, sounds good. And I just want to flag that we've got some questions in the chat, and we're going to address everyone's questions just after we get through these FAQs.
We will, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so will you connect with us, or will you connect us with other people in our community that apply?
For sure, we'll definitely connect you if we hear from others who are interested, and then we'll let you continue the conversation and organize yourselves.
And what is the selection process?
So thank you, Jess. We'll be working with a selection committee that is made up of change makers, not only from Communities Building Belonging, but from across Tamarack. People that have been really central to developing our work within vibrant communities and who have an understanding of ABCD and collective impact, as well as living experience to help us inform our next steps. And we were hoping that we won't have to turn communities away because of capacity, but we want to make sure that we're providing a meaningful experience for all participants. So that's something that we will need to balance. Yeah.
Okay, great. And is there a cost to participate? Do participants get funding to participate or to support or support to find funding?
Yes, we're being asked this question often. So this is designed for communities in Canada. Ideally, we want you to be a communities building belonging member because the relationship doesn't end after the cohort. Our membership lasts for 1 year. And in our experience, we just had a conversation last night about this. It's very meaningful for communities if after they embark on a learning journey, they continue receiving that support to help them get unstuck on specific pieces of their work. So this is why we're encouraging the membership. We're also mindful that these are difficult times, that especially communities with lived experience might have difficulties accessing the resources to get a membership. Let's have a conversation. For now, just please submit an application if you think you have a great project and you have the team and the energy to do this. Just send it over and then we'll take it from there. And we'll have a one-on-one conversation to assess your needs and see how we can collaborate. But we don't want that to stop you from applying.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. How advanced do we need to be in our belonging work?
So we recognize that all communities are on different journeys, and that's absolutely fine. We are going to have a couple. This is why we have a couple of resources that are going to be helping you, helping us build a basis on how we understand ABCD and collective impact, and then we'll take it from there. And if you are more advanced in the process, you will still find this content useful for you. If you are at an early stage, this is also fine because you will have access to one-on-one conversations with Prachir and I to help you move forward on your learning journey.
Okay, great. So it sounds like it's tailored based on everyone's level.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Sorry, if I can just say another thing, Jess, this is why we talk about plans and interventions, because we're conscious that some communities might have already a plan in place and they might want to test an interventions, which is absolutely fine. So yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. And is the cohort designed for small, mid, or large-sized communities?
Yeah, great question. So if you are part of a mid or large size community, it might be helpful for you to think about a neighborhood strategy. If you're part of a small community, you could look at a community-wide strategy depending on the team structure that you have, the amount of representation, and the amount of resources available. But it's open to anyone, really.
Okay, makes sense. I think that's it for our FAQs.
Awesome.
Would you like to go through the chat questions? Did you want some
Yeah.
assistance with that?
That would be
Of
great.
course.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. Let me just scroll up. So we have a question from Lisa Clark. It looks like, Prachir, you've already answered, but just so we can make sure it's clear for everyone, is the membership fee per individual or for a team?
Yeah, thanks for flagging that, Jess. So the membership fee is for each team that'll be applying for the cohort, not for each individual within a team. Thanks for that clarification.
Sounds good. And I think it's from past experiences from Marina. From past experiences, can you share the sectors that usually participate?
Yeah, so I can start us off and Jorge, yeah, feel free to jump in. And I'll just note that because it is our first year of the cohort, it'll be interesting to see which groups join. But the intention really is for each team to sort of have that multi-sectoral approach. So bringing in folks from government, but also the third sector, nonprofits, and residents, with lived and living experience. But I would say our membership more generally also reflects that as well. But Jorge, feel free to add anything.
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you, Prachir. We really work with different sectors. I would say more than thinking about the sector, and thanks for that question, Marina. This is great. We're thinking about a willingness to unblock things and move forward. These are the people that we're looking for. People that don't need to be convinced that this work needs to happen. It's people that just want to move forward in the work that they want to do. And I'm saying this because we've worked with the business sector too. We've worked with in local institutions like schools, governments, not just within communities building belonging, but across our networks. And we always see this pattern. We could have we could be so different and have many different perspectives, but we agree on the need to move forward. And this is the most important piece, I would say.
Okay, sounds great. And then we have a question from Lynn. Do we need to apply with a specific project in mind or just to support our larger campaign to build greater belonging to our community? We've been working on it for a while, but we want to step it up.
This is great. I think, yeah, if you have already your vision and your work, just bring it on and then see how we can work together to help you move forward. And is there anything that you'd like to add, Prachir?
No, I think that's great. I mean, yeah, I would say definitely don't have to apply with the specific project in mind. I think also part of the process of going through the journey is maybe identifying that one intervention or interventions that you want to start implementing in the community. So very much if it's about, that larger effort to build belonging in the community, that's what we're here to support. No need to have specifics figured out before.
Okay, great. And Prachir, there are also 2 questions in the Q&A. Do you want to take over for those? Because I think you mentioned that we would get to them.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just touch on Carrie's question, and I know, Jorge, you spoke to this a bit, but I'll just read it out for everyone. Regarding equity, just wondering if you have any recommendations around honoring the commitment of individuals with lived experience. I really appreciate the targeted learning opportunity for leadership development and systems change, but I'm wondering specifically about compensation. Any thoughts or recommendations? Thanks so much for flagging that, Carrie, and we're definitely cognizant and want to honor the time and expertise that those individuals would be bringing, and that's why we'll be having those stipends to help support those individuals as they go through this work, and that's to, address any also costs that they might have in participating, so things like childcare, transportation, those sorts of pieces to help make sure that they're able to participate in the cohort as meaningfully as possible, and also honor the time and expertise that they're bringing to doing this work. So thanks for that question. And I see we have another question from an anonymous participant on the cost of membership. Is there more information you can share? Thanks so much for that. So I dropped a link in the chat to the membership brochure, and that you can refer to after for the costs for membership. So it does follow by population size, which you can take a look at in the membership package there. And I'll note again that the cost is, if groups are unable to meet the full cost, we're definitely open to discussing. So for communities and regions with a population of more than 100,000, the typical rate is 1,500. And for communities and regions with a population of less than 100,000, it's $1,000. But as I mentioned, we work with groups on a one-on-one basis for those who may not be able to pay the full fee.
Yeah, thank you, Prachir. And another thing I'd like to add, as I mentioned, we're going through several transitions at Tamarack, all in the spirit of helping you and providing more value to your work. And when you become a Tamarack member, you're also becoming a member of all of the other networks that we're working with. So this means that you have access to resources, content, and coaching opportunities, not only in the context of belonging, but also in the context of the different themes related to poverty, because as a reminder, at Tamarack, we're working to end poverty in all of its forms. In our case, we're working to end the poverty of connections, but we have colleagues that are working to end the poverty of low income and economic inequities. We're also working with colleagues to end the poverty of the disconnections to our natural environment and the climate crisis. And we're working with communities that are looking to end the poverty in terms of outcomes for youth. So you're part of a bigger community, a bigger movement, and you also get access to, I believe it's to at least 2 tickets for Engage Fest, which is our annual gathering at Tamarack that is happening virtually. And we're gonna have different groups, regional groups, to bring us together and stay connected. So there's gonna be more opportunities as part of the membership. So this is a really exciting moment to connect and join us.
Yeah, I love the way you described that, Jorge, the different kinds of poverty. I think that's a beautiful way of putting it.
Thanks.
I'll just maybe note the question that Lynn had in the chat. So in bringing other sectors into our team to unblock processes, is it an expectation that these folks also commit to the same level of homework, etc.?
Sorry, I I had some issues listening with my sound. Something happened and I cannot find the question. Would you mind repeating it again, Prachir?
No, all good. Yeah, so it's in bringing other sectors to our team to unblock processes. Is it an expectation that these folks also commit to the same level of homework and other sort of expectations of the cohort?
Yeah, that's a great question. It really depends on how you want to structure your work. So we are not being prescriptive on that end. So however, we've found that it helps if you identify your own team lead and who's going to be responsible for what. And I'd like to add, I mentioned the leadership opportunity for individuals with living experience. Our hope is that those individuals will be working primarily on their leadership journey and then eventually pollinate their community groups to help them develop their work. But we would suggest that if this person is already doing this training, this person is not going to be also the team lead because it becomes a lot of work, right? So we really want to invite you to be mindful of everyone's times and see how you can work better together. And if you have questions as you start thinking about your work breakdown, please reach out to us. We'll have a conversation and we can help you develop a plan for your team to work together if that's helpful, of course.
Awesome. Thanks, Jorge. I'll just note another question in the chat from Jessica. So working in the US, unable to join the cohort, but still interested in CBB. So yes, please, for anyone who's interested in membership generally, or maybe is outside of Canada and on this call, definitely feel free to send me an email or myself or Jorge an email with questions about membership. And we'd be happy to chat to learn more about the work that you're doing in your community and how CBB might be able to support it.
Thanks, Prachir. And if I may add, we haven't forgotten about you. We're very grateful for our US partners. You bring so much to our work. You've been doing it since 2016. We will be having learning opportunities for you as well. We're already in touch with some of our partners in the States to see how we can be meaningful in integrating this work. And the main reason why we're doing this is because the work that we're building in the Circle of Actions right now is also part, as I mentioned, you're joining a bigger movement. We're building a movement to build a national belonging strategy, a strategy from coast to coast to coast, to mobilize all sectors in co-creating a strategy for the government, the federal government, to think about it from a budget perspective and from a regulatory perspective. We only have until 2025 to get this into something serious, and we're very committed to it. And we're confident that the work that we're going to be doing in the Circle of Actions will help us build that narrative and amplify your amazing efforts so that the government can look at it and it can be better resourced moving forward. This is the main reason why we're working with Canadian communities right now in the Circle of Actions. But again, we're thinking of you. We haven't forgotten about you. And we will be having more learning opportunities for you over the course of this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Jorge. And if folks have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or come off mute. In the meantime, I'll just flag 2 questions that were dropped in the Q&A box that I just responded by message, but in case it's on anyone else's mind, there was one around whether there's a fee for the cohort other than the membership fee to belong to the CBB network, which is a great question. And there is no fee to participate in the cohort itself. Being eligible to apply for the cohort is included within that membership fee. So thank you for clarifying that. And then there was a question around whether there's one cohort or cohorts, and if there's multiple cohorts, how will participants be put together? So there will be one cohort of communities, which is the Circle of Actions, and each community will have a team made up of different actors. And that systems transformers cohort that Jorge was talking about is sort of within the Circle of Actions, specifically for the individuals with lived and living experience within each of the teams. So I hope that helps clarify things. And Jorge, yeah, feel free to add anything.
That's great. Thank you, Prachir.
Awesome.
Okay. Anything else? Should we do some final announcements?
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay.
If folks have questions, feel free to continue dropping them in the chat, but we'll just move to, yeah, a few closing announcements we have. And thanks so much, Jess, again, for moderating this part of the session and walking us through some of the questions.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
I hope you can all see my screen and not my messy desktop. Can you see my screen? Is it
Yes.
working? Yeah, okay, great. So just going to remove this thing here. Great. So just as a reminder, on upcoming webinar, just to my point, we haven't forgotten about our US friends, but also this is really helpful for our Canadian friends too. We're having a webinar on February 21st with Diamond and our friends at the Learning Tree. And we're going to talk about creating a culture of abundance and equity. It's happening one more time on February 21st at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We hope you can join us. And as I mentioned, we're building a movement on the National Belonging Strategy. We want to go create this with you, and we want you to help us center the gifts and aspirations of our communities at the heart of this work and belonging. Please join us, and you can scan the QR code to sign the belonging pledge that we're mobilizing across Canada. Things are going really well, but we want to see even more people joining this movement. So if you have other questions on how to get involved and want to participate in a couple of consultations that we'll also be hosting this year, please feel free to contact me by email. My email address is over there. It's just here, Jorge, Jorge, @tamarackcommunity.ca.
Awesome. With that, that brings us to the end of today's session. Thank you all so much for joining us and for your insightful questions. We hope we were able to get to all of them, but if there's anything that we missed or if there's anything that comes to mind after the call, please feel free to send Jorge or myself an email and we'd be happy to connect and chat. As I mentioned, you will all receive an email in the coming days with the recording of today's session, as well as any resources that we mentioned or shared in the chat. And we really look forward to reading through your applications. And with that, enjoy the rest of your Wednesdays, everyone.